All right, let's delve into this fascinating and complex topic: understanding biological and psychological differences in relationships. This is a subject that lies at the very heart of human interaction, the bedrock upon which we build our families, our friendships, and indeed the very fabric of our societies. And it's a topic that frankly is often misunderstood, glossed over, or outright ignored in our overly sensitive and politically correct times. But I believe, and I know this from decades of observation and research, that a deep and honest understanding of these fundamental differences is absolutely crucial if we are to navigate the treacherous waters of relationships successfully, and perhaps more importantly, if we are to build genuinely meaningful and fulfilling connections with others. Now, when we talk about biological differences, we're not just talking about the obvious physical distinctions between men and women, although those are certainly a part of the equation. We're talking about the deep-seated evolutionary pressures that have shaped our brains, our hormones, and our fundamental drives over millennia. Think about it. For the vast majority of human history, men and women faced very different challenges and played very different roles in the survival of the species. For men, generally speaking, the evolutionary imperative was often tied to competition, to providing, to protecting. Their bodies and their minds were, in many ways, sculpted by the need to hunt, to defend territory, to establish dominance hierarchies. This isn't to say that all men are inherently aggressive or that their only concern is power, but it is to acknowledge that these evolutionary pressures have left an indelible mark on the male psyche. Think about the higher levels of testosterone in men, for example. While often associated with aggression, testosterone also plays a role in drive, in ambition, in the pursuit of status and resources. These were, and in many ways still are, important factors for a man's ability to provide for and protect a family. For women, on the other hand, the evolutionary pressures were often centered around nurturing, on raising offspring, and on building social bonds within a community. Their bodies and minds were shaped by the need to care for vulnerable children, to foster cooperation, and to navigate complex social dynamics within a group. Think about the hormonal fluctuations in women, the role of estrogen and oxytocin in bonding and attachment. These hormones played a crucial role in ensuring the survival and well-being of their offspring and the stability of the social unit. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not saying that these are rigid, immutable categories that define every single individual. Human beings are incredibly complex, and there is a vast amount of individual variation within both sexes. But to deny the existence of these general biological tendencies, to pretend that we are all born with completely blank slates, is to ignore a significant body of scientific evidence and to misunderstand the very foundations of human nature. These biological differences, these fundamental predispositions, have profound implications for how men and women approach relationships, how they communicate, and what they often seek in a partner. For example, research suggests that men, on average, tend to prioritize physical attractiveness and youth in a mate, as these were historically indicators of fertility and reproductive potential. Women, on average, tend to prioritize resources, status, and commitment, as these were historically indicators of a man's ability to provide and protect. Now, before anyone jumps down my throat, let me reiterate, this is about averages and tendencies. There are certainly men who prioritize emotional connection and women who prioritize physical attractiveness. But to ignore these general patterns is to miss a crucial piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding the dynamics of attraction and relationship formation. Furthermore, these biological differences influence communication styles. Men, on average, tend to be more direct and task-oriented in their communication. They often focus on solving problems and achieving goals. Women, on average, tend to be more relational and emotionally expressive in their communication. They often prioritize building connection and understanding feelings. Again, these are generalizations, and there are certainly men who are highly emotionally intelligent and women who are very direct in their communication. But understanding these general tendencies can help us to navigate misunderstandings and conflicts that often arise in relationships. For example, a woman might feel frustrated if her male partner doesn't seem to be listening to her emotional concerns, while a man might feel overwhelmed if his female partner seems to be focusing on the emotional nuances of a situation rather than the practical solution. Now, let's shift our focus to the psychological differences, which are intricately intertwined with the biological ones, but also have their own distinct dimensions. Our psychological makeup is shaped not only by our genes and hormones, but also by our individual experiences, our upbringing, our cultural context, and our personalities. One of the key psychological differences we see in relationships often revolves around what each partner brings to the table in terms of their emotional needs and their ways of expressing those needs. For example, research suggests that women on average tend to have a higher need for emotional intimacy and connection in a relationship. They often seek to feel understood, validated, and supported emotionally by their partners. Men, on the other hand, while certainly needing connection, may often express their needs in different ways, perhaps through shared activities, through providing support, or through a sense of being respected and admired. This doesn't mean that men don't have emotional needs or that women don't value respect. It's about the emphasis and the primary ways in which these needs are often expressed and sought. Understanding these differences is crucial for building a relationship where both partners feel seen, heard, and valued. Another important psychological difference relates to how men and women often process and cope with stress. Research suggests that men, on average, may be more likely to withdraw or seek solitude when stressed, while women, on average, may be more likely to seek social support and talk about their feelings. Again, these are generalizations, but understanding these tendencies can help partners to respond more effectively to each other's stress and avoid misunderstandings. A woman might misinterpret her partner's withdrawal as a sign of emotional distance, while a man might feel pressured or overwhelmed by his partner's need to talk about every detail of their stress. And furthermore, personality differences play a significant role in how individuals approach relationships. For example, someone who is highly introverted might have different needs and expectations in a relationship than someone who is highly extroverted. Someone who is high in conscientiousness might have different expectations regarding responsibility and commitment than someone who is lower in this trait. It's important to remember that these psychological differences are not necessarily about one being better than the other. They are simply different ways of being in the world, different ways of experiencing and responding to emotions, and different ways of approaching relationships. The key is to understand these differences, to appreciate them, and to learn how to navigate them effectively. Now, you might be thinking, well, this all sounds rather deterministic. Are we just slaves to our biology and our psychology? And the answer is a resounding no. While these biological and psychological factors provide a fundamental framework for understanding human behavior, they do not dictate our every action or our every thought. We have agency. We have the capacity for self-awareness, for learning, for growth, and for consciously choosing how we want to behave in our relationships. Understanding these differences is not about finding excuses for bad behavior or about reinforcing harmful stereotypes. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves and of others, which can ultimately lead to more empathy, more compassion, and more effective communication. For example, if a man understands that his partner, on average, might have a higher need for emotional intimacy, he can make a conscious effort to be more open and expressive in his own emotional life. If a woman understands that her partner, on average, might need more space to process stress, she can learn to give him that space without feeling rejected. This understanding also allows us to challenge our own assumptions and biases. If we are aware of the general tendencies, we can be more mindful of whether we are falling into the trap of making generalizations about our partners based on their sex rather than on their individual personality and behavior. So how do we put this understanding into practice in our own relationships? Firstly, it requires open and honest communication. We need to be able to talk about our needs and our perspectives with our partners, even when it feels difficult or uncomfortable. We need to be willing to listen to our partner's perspectives, even if they differ from our own. Secondly, it requires empathy. We need to try to put ourselves in our partner's shoes and to understand their experiences and their perspectives, even if we don't fully share them. This doesn't mean we have to agree with everything, but it does mean we need to make an effort to understand. Thirdly, it requires a willingness to compromise and to adapt. Relationships are not static. They evolve over time, and we need to be willing to adjust our expectations and our behaviors as our partners and our relationship change. This might mean learning new ways of communicating, finding new ways to meet each other's needs, and being willing to step outside of our comfort zones. Fourthly, it requires a commitment to continuous learning and growth. We need to be willing to learn about ourselves, about our partners, and about the dynamics of relationships. This might involve reading books, attending workshops, or seeking professional help when needed. Now, some people might argue that focusing on these differences reinforces stereotypes and can be harmful. And I understand that concern. We live in a society that is increasingly sensitive to issues of gender and identity. But I would argue that ignoring these fundamental differences is not the answer. It's like trying to navigate a complex map without acknowledging the different terrains and the different challenges they present. We need to understand the landscape if we are to navigate it successfully. Furthermore, understanding these differences can actually lead to greater appreciation and respect for each other. When we understand that our partners may have different needs and perspectives based on their biological and psychological makeup, we can learn to value those differences rather than seeing them as a source of conflict. We can learn to appreciate the unique strengths and perspectives that each partner brings to the relationship. For example, a man might appreciate his partner's emotional depth and her ability to connect with others on a deeper level, while a woman might appreciate her partner's strength, his problem-solving abilities, and his sense of stability. Of course, it's also crucial to remember that individuals are far more complex than any simple categorization. We are all shaped by a multitude of factors, including our personal experiences, our cultural backgrounds, our values, and our individual personalities. No two people are exactly alike, even within the same sex. Therefore, while understanding these general biological and psychological tendencies can provide a valuable framework for understanding relationships, it's essential to approach each individual with an open mind and a willingness to learn about their unique needs and perspectives. In conclusion, understanding the biological and psychological differences in relationships is not about dividing us or creating conflict. It's about providing a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the complexities of human connection. It's about recognizing that men and women, on average, may have different needs, different communication styles, and different ways of experiencing the world. And it's about learning how to navigate these differences with greater awareness, empathy, and respect. It's about building bridges of understanding rather than walls of division. It's about fostering deeper and more meaningful connections based on a genuine appreciation for the unique perspectives and contributions that each individual brings to the table. And ultimately, it's about creating relationships that are not only functional, but also deeply fulfilling and supportive for both partners. This is not just an academic exercise. It's a practical necessity for anyone who wants to build and sustain healthy, thriving relationships in the complex world we inhabit. And it's a journey of continuous learning and growth, a journey that I believe is well worth undertaking. And as we continue this exploration, it's worth emphasizing that this understanding of biological and psychological differences is not meant to be a rigid set of rules or a prescription for how relationships should be. Rather, it's a set of insights, a lens through which we can better understand the dynamics at play in our own relationships and in the relationships of others. It's a starting point for deeper inquiry, for more meaningful conversations, and for a greater appreciation of the incredible diversity and complexity of human interaction. Think about the implications of this understanding in various stages of a relationship. In the early stages of attraction, for instance, understanding that men, on average, may be more visually oriented in their initial attraction, while women may be more attuned to indicators of resource and commitment, can shed light on why certain initial sparks ignite and why others don't. It doesn't mean that one approach is right and the other is wrong. It simply highlights some of the underlying biological and psychological factors that influence our initial assessments of potential partners. As a relationship progresses and deepens, understanding these differences becomes even more crucial. When conflicts arise, for example, understanding that a man might instinctively withdraw to process a problem while a woman might instinctively seek connection and communication can help partners to avoid the common trap of misinterpreting each other's behaviors. The woman might see the man's withdrawal as a sign of disinterest or emotional distance, while the man might feel pressured or misunderstood by his partner's persistent attempts to talk. Acknowledging these different coping mechanisms, rooted in both biology and psychology, can pave the way for more constructive and empathetic communication during times of stress. Furthermore, consider the impact of these differences on intimacy and sexual expression. While both men and women experience a desire for intimacy, the ways in which that desire is expressed and experienced can often differ. Understanding that men, on average, might be more focused on the physical aspects of intimacy, while women might place a greater emphasis on emotional connection and feeling safe and secure, can help couples to bridge potential gaps in their expectations and desires. This requires open and honest communication about what each partner truly values and needs in order to feel connected and fulfilled. It's also important to acknowledge the role of societal and cultural influences. While we are discussing fundamental biological and psychological tendencies, it's undeniable that our societies and cultures shape how these tendencies are expressed and how they manifest in relationships. Cultural norms around gender roles, communication styles, and expectations within relationships can either amplify or mitigate some of these underlying biological and psychological differences. For example, in some cultures, traditional gender roles may reinforce certain behavioral patterns, while in more egalitarian societies, there may be more flexibility and fluidity in how men and women express themselves and interact. Therefore, a comprehensive understanding of relationships requires us to consider not only the biological and psychological underpinnings, but also the broader social and cultural context in which those relationships exist. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture, of biology and experience. Now, let's address a common concern that often arises in discussions like this: the fear of essentialism. The fear that by acknowledging these differences, we are somehow saying that men and women are fundamentally different and that there's no room for individual variation or for people to step outside of traditional gender roles. And I want to be very clear, that is not my intention, and it is not the conclusion we should draw from this discussion. Acknowledging general tendencies does not negate the existence of individual differences. There are plenty of men who are highly emotionally attuned and women who are incredibly logical and direct. Human beings are incredibly diverse, and we should celebrate that diversity. But to deny the existence of these general patterns altogether is to ignore a significant aspect of human nature and to potentially miss valuable insights into the dynamics of our relationships. Instead of seeing these differences as rigid categories, we should view them as providing a framework for understanding the average tendencies and preferences of men and women. This understanding can then help us to be more aware of potential areas of misunderstanding and conflict in our relationships, and to approach those challenges with greater empathy and a willingness to communicate effectively. Think of it like understanding the general characteristics of different types of plants. Knowing that a cactus thrives in dry environments while a fern needs more moisture doesn't mean that every single cactus is exactly the same, or that every single fern has identical needs. It simply gives us a general understanding of their basic requirements, which can help us to care for them more effectively. Similarly, understanding the general tendencies of men and women can help us to nurture our relationships more effectively. Moreover, this understanding can empower us to make more informed choices in our relationships. When we are aware of some of the potential differences in our needs and expectations, we can be more proactive in communicating those needs and in seeking partners who are more likely to be compatible with us in the long run. This doesn't mean we should only seek partners who perfectly align with our own tendencies, but it does mean that a degree of self-awareness and an understanding of our own needs and the needs of potential partners can be beneficial. Now, let's also consider the implications of this understanding for raising children. Understanding that boys and girls, on average, may have different interests and developmental trajectories can help parents to provide a more supportive and nurturing environment for their children. It doesn't mean that we should limit children based on stereotypes, but it does mean that we can be more attuned to their individual needs and preferences and provide them with the support and opportunities they need to thrive. For example, understanding that boys, on average, may have a greater need for physical activity and rough and tumble play can help parents to provide appropriate outlets for that energy. Understanding that girls, on average, may develop verbal skills earlier and may be more interested in social interaction can help parents to foster those skills and provide opportunities for social connection. Again, this is about recognizing general tendencies, not about imposing rigid expectations. Furthermore, this understanding can be valuable in navigating the complexities of the modern workplace. While this discussion has focused primarily on personal relationships, the principles of understanding biological and psychological differences can also be applied to understanding communication styles, leadership styles, and team dynamics in professional settings. Recognizing that men and women may approach problem solving or communication in different ways can lead to more effective collaboration and a more inclusive work environment. It's a matter of recognizing and valuing the diverse perspectives and approaches that different individuals bring to the table. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels heard, respected, and able to contribute their unique talents and skills. Now, I know that some of this can be uncomfortable to discuss. It challenges some of the prevailing narratives in our society that emphasize complete equality and sameness between the sexes. But I would argue that true equality doesn't mean pretending that we are all identical. It means recognizing and respecting our differences while ensuring that everyone has equal opportunities and is treated with dignity and respect. To deny the existence of these fundamental differences is, in a way, to deny a significant part of what makes us human. It's to ignore the rich tapestry of human experience and to potentially limit our ability to understand and connect with each other on a deeper level. So as we continue to explore this topic, let us do so with an open mind, with a willingness to learn, and with a commitment to fostering greater understanding and empathy in our relationships. Let us strive to move beyond simplistic generalizations and to embrace the complexity and nuance of human nature. Let us recognize that understanding these biological and psychological differences is not about assigning blame or creating divisions. It's about gaining a deeper appreciation for the intricate dance of human interaction and about equipping ourselves with the knowledge and skills we need to build stronger, more fulfilling, and more resilient relationships. And as we move forward, let us remember that the most successful relationships are built on a foundation of mutual respect, open communication, and a genuine desire to understand and support our partners regardless of any inherent differences. It's about finding that balance between acknowledging our differences and celebrating our shared humanity. And as we continue this exploration, let's consider the practical implications of this understanding in navigating common relationship challenges. For instance, the issue of conflict resolution often highlights these underlying differences. When a conflict arises, a man might be more inclined to seek a solution and move on, focusing on the practical aspects of the problem. A woman, on the other hand, might prioritize understanding the emotional undercurrents of the conflict and the impact it has had on the relationship. Now, neither approach is inherently right or wrong. Both perspectives offer valuable insights. However, a failure to recognize these differing tendencies can lead to frustration and a sense of being unheard. The man might feel that the woman is dwelling on the emotional aspects and preventing a resolution, while the woman might feel that the man is dismissive of her feelings and doesn't care about the impact of the conflict on their connection. Understanding these potential differences in conflict resolution styles can empower couples to communicate more effectively. It can help them to understand that their partner's approach is not necessarily a sign of a lack of care or a desire to avoid the issue. Instead, it can be seen as a different way of processing and addressing the conflict, rooted in their underlying biological and psychological predispositions. Couples can then learn to adapt their communication styles to bridge these differences, perhaps by acknowledging the emotional impact of the conflict while also working towards a practical solution. Another area where these differences often manifest is in the realm of emotional expression and support. As we've touched upon, women, on average, tend to be more comfortable expressing and seeking emotional support, while men, on average, may be less inclined to do so. This can sometimes lead to misunderstandings in a relationship. A woman might feel that her partner is emotionally distant or unsupportive if he doesn't readily share his feelings or offer emotional comfort in the way she might expect. A man, on the other hand, might feel that his partner is overly emotional or demanding if she frequently seeks emotional validation. Again, understanding these general tendencies can foster greater empathy and understanding. A woman can learn to appreciate that her partner may express his care and support in different ways, perhaps through actions rather than words. A man can learn to recognize the importance of emotional connection for his partner and to make a conscious effort to be more open and expressive. This is not about forcing anyone to be someone they are not, but rather about fostering a greater awareness of each other's needs and finding ways to meet those needs within the context of the relationship. Furthermore, consider the impact of these differences on the division of labor and responsibilities within a relationship. Historically, and to some extent still today, societal expectations have often aligned with these biological and psychological tendencies. For example, the expectation that women would primarily be responsible for childcare and domestic tasks, while men would be the primary breadwinners, has roots in these evolutionary pressures. While modern society is thankfully moving towards greater equality in these areas, it's still important to acknowledge that these underlying tendencies can influence how couples negotiate and divide responsibilities. Understanding these potential influences can help couples to have more open and honest conversations about their expectations and to find a division of labor that works for both of them, rather than simply falling back on traditional gender roles. It's also crucial to remember the impact of hormonal influences. Hormones play a significant role in shaping our behavior and our emotional responses. For example, the fluctuations in hormones throughout a woman's menstrual cycle can impact her mood and her emotional needs. Understanding these hormonal influences can help partners to be more understanding and supportive during these times. Similarly, the impact of testosterone on male behavior, while often overstated and misunderstood, can still play a role in influencing drive, competitiveness, and risk-taking behavior. While we shouldn't use hormones as an excuse for all behavior, being aware of their potential influence can add another layer of understanding to the complexities of human interaction. It can foster greater empathy and a recognition that our emotional states and behaviors are often influenced by a complex interplay of biological and psychological factors. Now, let's address the question of how we can use this understanding to build stronger and more fulfilling relationships. It starts with self-awareness. We need to understand our own biological and psychological predispositions, our own needs, and our own communication styles. This self-awareness allows us to communicate more effectively with our partners and to articulate our needs more clearly. Secondly, it requires a willingness to learn about our partners. We need to be curious about their experiences, their perspectives, and their ways of being in the world. This involves actively listening, asking questions, and being open to understanding their unique individual makeup. Thirdly, it requires empathy. We need to try to see the world through our partner's eyes, to understand their feelings and their perspectives, even if they differ from our own. Empathy is the cornerstone of a strong and healthy relationship, and it is essential for navigating the inevitable differences that arise. Fourthly, it requires effective communication. We need to be able to express our needs and our feelings in a clear and respectful manner, and we need to be willing to listen to our partner's needs and feelings without defensiveness. This involves learning healthy communication skills, such as active listening, using I statements, and avoiding blame. Fifthly, it requires a willingness to compromise and adapt. No two people are perfectly aligned in their needs and preferences. A successful relationship requires a willingness to find common ground, to make adjustments, and to adapt to each other's changing needs and circumstances over time. And finally, it requires a commitment to ongoing growth and learning. Relationships are not static. They evolve and change over time. We need to be committed to continuously learning about ourselves, about our partners, and about the dynamics of our relationship. This might involve seeking out resources such as books, workshops, or professional counseling when needed. Now, I want to reiterate that this is not about finding the perfect partner who perfectly aligns with all of our needs and preferences. Such a person does not exist. It's about finding a partner with whom we can build a strong and meaningful connection based on mutual respect, understanding, and a willingness to navigate our differences together. It's about recognizing that our differences can actually enrich our relationships, providing us with different perspectives, different strengths, and different ways of experiencing the world. When we learn to appreciate and value those differences, rather than seeing them as a source of conflict, we can build relationships that are truly dynamic, resilient, and deeply fulfilling. So as we continue to explore this fascinating topic, let us do so with a spirit of curiosity, a commitment to understanding, and a genuine desire to build stronger and more meaningful connections with the people we care about. Let us embrace the complexity of human nature and recognize that our biological and psychological differences, when understood and navigated with care, can actually be a source of strength and growth in our relationships. The journey of understanding ourselves and others is a lifelong one, but it is a journey that ultimately leads to greater connection, greater fulfillment, and a deeper appreciation for the incredible tapestry of human experience. And that, my friends, is a journey well worth taking.